What's up, everybody? It is Izzy, and I am back again today, again with another Q&A. So let's get into the first question of the day here. I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, so I'm sorry if I'm a little bit quiet reading these. If you wanted to train, eat for aesthetics, what would be different in your approach? I mean, nothing really. Like, getting bigger is getting bigger. It's just that I would do less food and less drugs. Because I think as far as aesthetics go, there's definitely a size limit on that if we're talking about popular aesthetics. As far as like my individual physique, I think my quads and adductors are probably as big as they need to be. My erectors are as big as they need to be, and probably it's taking more from me to do stuff like barbell squats and deadlifts than it's giving to my physique at this point. I'd probably need a lot of emphasis on upper body push musculature, chest, triceps, delts, side delts for a long time to get that stuff to catch up to my legs, and to a lesser degree, even for it to catch up to my back. So that's just based on my personal physique. Not everybody obviously has to specialize in upper body. It depends on what you think looks aesthetic. This was my final warm-up today before my deadlift top set. I like to do a little poll before those. When you were natural, did you notice a large change in your physique when going from powerlifting to bodybuilding? To be fair, I only did that for maybe like 6 months, but I did notice it, and it was very dramatic and quick. And a big part of that is because I started training a lot of muscle groups I didn't really train with any effort. Biceps, side delts, calves, lats to a certain degree. And also, just as far as SFR goes, max grip, max arch bench with tiny range of motion, sumo deadlift with tiny range of motion, and wide stance low bar are just not the best choices for hypertrophy. So once I started using a lot of full range of motion movements, and I got a lot stronger at them, I built a lot of muscle really quickly. And I think that's typical for most powerlifters who make the switch. The Baki physique. Is that, if I could pick a physique, I'd pick that, or would you actually alter training to achieve that look? It's just, if I could pick a physique, I'd pick that. I don't really care about aesthetics as a goal at this point. I've already, in my opinion, had a very aesthetic physique before by like popular standards, by what like the general public would consider aesthetic. I've already lived that little fantasy out to see what life would be like that. And if I was just training for aesthetics at this point, like 14 years into lifting, I'd probably just quit. It's not an exciting goal for me anymore. Have you had any issues with your cpap, mask, machine, pressure, type of treatment, etc.? No. My cpap saved my life. Like, I'm not even, I don't like to be an evangelist and exaggerate for things, but I had very, very bad sleep apnea. A AHI score of 35 is considered severe sleep apnea, and that's roughly 35 breathing events, so interrupted breathing per hour. Mine was over 100. I had over 100 interrupted breathing events per hour. So I was desperate to make it work from day one, and unlike a lot of people, I didn't have any trepidation. I was like, I'm putting this thing on, and I'm never taking it off. And I really can't even sleep without it anymore. How do you know that you need to deload? Well, one, you could have planned deloads where you just know that that's about when your recovery curve starts to go the wrong direction. But if you're doing reactive deloads, what you're going to look for is sustained regression across multiple movements, muscles, or sessions. And then you can corroborate that with, just things like disrupted sleep, a significant increase in aches and pains, and a decreased motivation to train. Another thing that can happen, which is happening to me right now, is you can have a propensity to get sick more easily if you're riding that line of fatigue. And I actually could probably use a bit of a deload myself, but I am going to probably try to put it off and see if I can't make some programmatic adjustments to keep progression rolling instead. And that's because I felt like there were some extenuating circumstances that caused some of my regressions today, so I don't want to overreact. Do you think you can make good size gains on a bro split, 1 times per week frequency per muscle? Of course you can. That's like the most popular split that pro bodybuilders use. Anyone can look around and see that almost all types of training work, at least sometimes. So the more interesting thing is to figure out what is the commonality between all the many, many different training systems that make them all work. And the biggest one that I can come up with is that they all produce PRs, progressive overload. If you're getting stronger over time on like any movement, that is going to produce some level of hypertrophy over time, right? And just because you're doing it once per week and it's your muscles are recovered and ready to train again before that, it's not going to be so infrequent that it keeps you from progressing and accruing muscle mass over time. So, a once per week bro split is a totally proven split that works. It just might not be the fastest way. Do you decrease the rate of weight progression for a movement the longer you do it? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if I'm doing a brand new movement, sometimes I make absurdly fast progression in the first few sessions. And I'm talking about like a movement that I've maybe never done before or only done once or twice. Sometimes I can add like a 25 or a 45, like a full plate every workout for a few workouts. So in that case, I will progress it pretty fast if I know that I can. But once my performance is stable or it's a movement that I've been doing for a long time, I made a full video on this today. I use my 1% rule for progression, and I micro load the weight, and I focus more on adding reps. Like I said, I made a video on this today. You can just go to the channel and see the most recent videos, and you'll be able to find it. Do you know what company makes the leg adductor in AJ Morris's video? These kind of questions crack me up. I don't watch all of AJ Morris's videos, so I cannot tell you what you're even talking about. The funny thing to me would be, why don't you just ask the person who made the video that has the equipment in it that you want to know what it is, instead of coming to me to ask me what it is. But anyway, the answer, the long story short, is I have no idea what company makes this obviously very special leg adductor machine that was in AJ Morris's video. I don't have anything to say beyond that. Today, this was another movement that I struggled to progress on, although I have some reasons for why I think that was. And going forward, long story short, I'm going to be doing this movement with shorts only because I feel like sweats actually provide support and make it easier. All that is required for your city to become a contender for the NBA championship is for me to live there. The last 3 NBA cities I lived in, Boston, they went to the finals the first year that I was here. Looks like they might go again this year. 2 cities ago, Phoenix, the year that I lived there, they weren't good yet. But then the very next year, they got Chris Paul and went to the finals. The last year that I was in Seattle, they drafted Durant and then moved the team like the year that I left. 3 years later, they were in the finals. So whoever wants to pay for me to live in your city so that your team can go to the finals, let me know. It's like I said, man, it's nothing that any of you will ever have to worry about. It's not caused by any one thing that anyone knows of. It's caused by chronically elevated allostatic load, which is just the total stress that the body is under. From one, being way beyond what's naturally possible in body weight. We're talking about a 5'6" guy, so 168 centimeters, over 300 pounds or almost 140 kilos. And at one point, he did get to 140 kilos, I believe. We're talking about somebody that was using 3 grams plus at certain times, plus of total anabolics. Somebody that was using 8 to 10 plus IUs of GH. And I'm not speculating. He's logged about all of this on his pay site. And then on top of all of that, you have really hard training and you have a diet of pure clean foods that was 7,000 to 8,000 plus calories a day. It's all of that combined over a long period that does it. It will never, ever happen to any of you. If you're worried about that, just do an intro week. Now, if you're asking what I would do, yes, I would train to failure. Rhabdo, maybe if you had several months off and then you're going to go do a CrossFit workout, sure. But if you think you're going to get rhabdo from doing like 1 or 2 sets to failure on your tricep pushdowns, I got the news for you. The human body's not that fragile. I've done some pretty stupid. I trained to failure for 30 straight days once. I didn't die. I didn't get rhabdo. I didn't even get injured. I actually made a lot of progress. And then I needed to deload for a long time before I felt normal. So it wasn't really worth it. How to tell if I'm making enough progress to continue with things as is? Well, lucky for you, friend, I made an entire video on this subject today, so just check the channel and you'll see it's in the recent videos. How the F does one shove down 7 to 8 calories of clean food routinely without barfing? Because you have goals that are more important to you than your temporary feelings. When I'm in the peak of off season and my calories are over 6,000, basically it takes me 45 to 50 minutes to eat every meal. No, I'm not exaggerating. Yes, that's 5 times a day. So I'm spending hours and hours and hours every day just eating. Bodybuilding is eating. Any plans to try the new anti-obesity drugs on a future cut? I assume bodybuilders are experimenting with them. Nah, man, but I got a great exercise for that. Let me show you how it works. So you take your hand like this, and then you push the plate or bowl away once you're done eating the amount of food that you're supposed to eat. Then you get up and leave the kitchen without getting any more food. Tips to avoid hitching heavier deadlifts in powerlifting. If we're talking about like strongman style hitching, that's just a lack of discipline. Just don't do it. Like, don't rebend your knees several times and hitch. If we're talking about that like borderline hitch where you're ramping a really hard rep, I find that a lot of that comes from somebody trying to lean back, lead their shoulders back, and almost throw their head up. I sometimes do this as well. So the cues that I would use here are chin down and hips forward. Because if you keep your chin down, it's really going to reduce that tendency to try to throw your shoulders back instead of hips forward. Is the Westside method effective for raw powerlifting? There are plenty of all-time world records that have been set by raw lifters who use Westside. So yes, it can be effective if you know what you're doing. The issue with Westside or conjugate is that nobody does it exactly the same way. So you can't really criticize it because there could be a different implementation that someone's using than the one that you're criticizing. So as long as you keep that in mind and you know what you're doing, absolutely, Westside can be effective. How to recover from muscle strains as fast as possible while still lifting. Do you think I have magic powers? Do I look like Jesus to you, my man? No, really, like all you can do is let it heal. You can, for certain injuries, as long as you can train through ranges of motion that don't hurt, you can sometimes stay below absolute loading thresholds that don't hurt. And most of all, you can train movements that don't affect the strained muscle. If you strained your pec, you should still be able to squat. You should still be able to do lateral raises, tricep pushdowns, things of that nature. So, I mean, that's really all there is to it. You get good sleep, have good nutrition, good stress management, and the injury will heal when it heals. If you're enhanced, you can look at BPC-157 and TB-500, human growth hormone, to potentially help those things heal faster. But I don't know of any magic way to heal your injury while still going full bore on the muscle that you hurt. Okay. Yeah, that was a flippant answer. I've answered this question like 5 times. Okay, that's why I gave the answer. I have heard of bodybuilders using Ozempic and similar drugs. There's a lot of problems with it, though, a lot of side effects. It seems to like ruin some people's ability to eat. There's nausea. It seems like the vast majority of people that I have read about using it have had a negative experience and don't plan to use it again. Dylan McCartney has used it successfully, I believe. I haven't checked recently to see if he's updated his opinion on that, but I think he managed to use it pretty successfully. As someone who has mentioned appetite is a big struggle for him. He's always hungry, even like in peak mass, eating like 5,000 plus calories a day. So there's some potential utility there, but it just has some nasty side effects in the literature and both anecdotally. So personally, I have no interest in using it based on what I've read. What app are you using to track your weights and lifts? I think people assume I have some like fancy spreadsheet, but I just do everything in iPhone notes. Just a notepad. And yes, this is all I do. Everything I wrote down is what I did. There's nothing I didn't write down. I mean, how do you know that's even true? Are you basing that on your own intuition, or is there like a statistic somewhere? But let's say that the majority of people don't track their workouts. Let's just take that at face value and say that it's true. If you look at what the majority of people do in almost any arena of life, it all comes down to, in many ways, avoiding things that are hard and that require effort. For example, 60% of American marriages end in divorce. 50% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 70% of Americans indicate on surveys that they could not come up with $2,000 in an emergency. Up to 70% of Americans are obese. So, you see what I'm going with this. I'm not trying to say that humanity as a whole sucks, but putting forth a lot of effort into anything is not the default behavior for human beings. Conserving energy is. All right, everybody, that's it for today. If you have any questions for me, just leave them down below. If you liked the video, like the video. If you have any way or desire to share it. It helps a lot. And as always, my friends, have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already.